ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां रामो राजमणिः सदा विजयते रामं रमेशं भजे रामेणाभिहता निशाचरचमु रामाय तस्मै नमः रामान्नास्ति परायणं परतरं रामस्य दासोऽस्म्यहं रामे चित्तलयः सदा भवतु मे भो राम मामुद्धर समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः 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 ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः. Second verse. क्षेत्रज्ञं चापि मां विद्धि सर्वक्षेत्रेषु भारत क्षेत्रक्षेत्रज्ञयोर्ज्ञानं यत्तज्ज्ञानं मतं मम. There have been 3 topics that was discussed until now. First topic was samsaritva in Ishvara is due to avidya. Ishvara being pure consciousness, there is no harm in equating Ishvara to Kshetrajna. The moment Bhagavan Krishna said, Kshetrajnam chapi mam viddhi, know that Kshetrajna to be me, there was an objection. Ishvara will become samsari. Shankaracharya clarified that was avidyaka pratiti. Means seeing joy and sorrow in consciousness. That is because of avidya. In aham, to see joy and sorrow. Yesterday we were discussing, we hear the word badha. Badha means negation. True negation is when we are able to negate dukkham in aham. The thought of sorrow, when it appears in I, to understand that this is an appearance. That is Vedantic moksha. How does Vedanta do dukkha nivritti? By making us understand that perception of sorrow in me is avidyaka. It is because of ignorance. In consciousness there can neither be sukham nor can be dukkham. Second topic was the effect and locus of ignorance. Because the Poorva Pakshi said, presence of avidya is bringing bondage in consciousness. Not that bondage is because of avidya. He said the very presence of avidya brings bondage in Ishvara. He says avidya is becoming a dharma of Ishvara. Just like if you have a red rose, that red color becomes a dharma of that rose. It will always be together. Like that, he says, avidya becomes a dharma of consciousness. Then Shankaracharya said, avidya is tamasa pratyaya. It is not a real entity. It has certain effects. 3 effects he pointed out. And he said, the locus of avidya is consciousness, Brahma. And the abhimani of avidya is jiva or buddhi. Panchadashi verse we had seen, 7th chapter. Ashraya of avidya is Brahma. Abhimani of avidya is buddhi. That is why when ignorance is removed, it is removed from buddhi only. And consciousness is the substratum of this entire universe, including avidya. You cannot have avidya independent somewhere. So that was said. Then came the third topic, where he said, if Kshetranya becomes Ishvara, samsara abhava will happen, samsari abhava will happen. Abhava means they will get erased. If Kshetranya becomes Ishvara, there is no jiva anymore, there is only Ishvara. So where is samsara, where is samsari? So he says in that case, scriptures would become meaningless. Because scriptures are addressing samsari. So if samsari is not there, whom will scriptures address? This is a very interesting point for a sadhaka, because he has already spent a long time trying to cultivate love for Shastra. Now the same Shastra is coming and telling him whatever purpose scripture had to accomplish, that purpose it has accomplished. Not to say that he will start or he will stop studying Shastra. It is only to say this freedom is such, it is not bound even by the study of Shastra. Means it's an indicator of absolute freedom. To this question, Shankaracharya said, all schools of thoughts have the same problem. That at the time of liberation, there is no samsara, there is no samsari. Otherwise, what kind of liberation it is? Where even at the point of liberation, you say, samsara remains and samsari remains. And none of them have said scriptures are meaningless. None of them have said scriptures are meaningless. Just like it is meaningful for them, it is also meaningful to us. So we don't have to separately answer. Okay. Nanu evam sati samsara samsaritva abhave shastra anartakyadi doshasyat iti chet. Na sarvaihi abhyupagatatvat. Everybody has accepted scriptures are meaningful. They will have lot of relevance in the state of ignorance. To remove ignorance, scriptures are going to do their work. Avidya vishayecha arthavatvam. Avidya vishay means during the time of ignorance, the scriptures are very meaningful. See, one way to put it is, if let's say a person is going on a boat to the other shore. Now once he has reached the other shore, one way you can tell is, boat has done its job. Boat has withdrawn itself after doing its job. Or you say that boat is not useful to him anymore. So when you say boat is not useful, you are not disrespecting the boat. All you are saying is, right now its work has been done. Same thing he is saying for Shastra. Then the Poorva Pakshi, who was from Dualistic school of thought, he came and said, in other schools of thought, there is a difference. What is the difference? He says, for us, bondage is real and liberation is also real. Bandha avastha is real and state of liberation is also real. Who is saying this? Dvaiti. He is saying for us, bondage is real and liberation is real. But for you, Vedantin, this is for you, bondage is unreal to begin with. So if bondage is unreal, the one who is bound is also unreal. So how come scriptures are addressing an unreal entity? Example given is scarecrow. You know that it is unreal if somebody keeps talking to it. He says that is laughable. Or you know that reflection is unreal and you keep talking to the reflection. These points in Bhagavad Geeta commentary, Ramanujacharya ji has raised. He says in Advaita Vedanta, Upadesha itself is asiddha. You cannot establish that teaching is possible. He says Guru is jnani or ajnani. You say jnani. So as jnani, is he seeing the world as real or unreal? He says unreal. So the student who is sitting in front of him, is he real or unreal? He says unreal. So if unreal student, he is giving real upadesha, how is that possible? He says it is like speaking to a reflection. Shankaracharya says, don't worry about us. We will take care of our school of thought. Let us discuss what are the problems if you take bondage to be real and liberation to be real. He said, in your school of thought, bondage is real and liberation is real. You tell me, does this come in sequence or does it come together? Means, do they coexist, these two states? You said avastha, right? Does bondage and liberation coexist? Or is there bondage first and then liberation? Let us take option number 1, coexisting. If it coexists, two contrary things which are real, they cannot coexist together. For example, sthiti gati, standing in one place and walking. Both cannot happen together. So first option is ruled out. You cannot have real bondage, real liberation together. What is option number 2? First, real bondage. Second state is real liberation. So here he says to go from status 1 to status 2. Was there a nimitta or was there no nimitta? Nimitta means cause. So example we had seen was, if there is a person who is bound and tied by a rope, that is his first state of bondage. Not illusory rope, real rope. Unlike that donkey's example. Here it is a real rope he is tied with. That is status 1. You release that rope, it is status 2, liberation. So what is the cause for going from status 1 to status 2? That removal of that rope. Okay, so now he says, in your understanding of bondage and liberation, tell me whether there is a cause or there is no cause. If you say there is no cause, that means what? Your condition of bondage will continue for eternality. If that person was really bound by that rope and you don't release him, if there is no cause involved, to be liberated, you need that cause. It will continue for eternality. Your bondage will continue, just like that person would remain bound. And second state is, if you have a cause, he says in your case, if bondage was real, that liberation will involve some karma. So that cause will involve some karma, and wherever karma is involved, a result of that has to be impermanent. So in the case of that person getting tied, the one who released him, if his mind changes, he can bind him again. So when the cause is removed, and you say that cause is responsible for real moksha, to bring you from real bondage to real moksha, then he says that cause will give you conditional liberation. That is his point here. If there is anya nimitta, then the moksha is aparamartha moksha. It was, some cause was involved in it in that way. The main point here is, in Advaita Vedanta, our teaching understanding is complete only when we start realizing that I was never bound and I don't need liberation. As pure consciousness, there was no bondage, therefore there is no need of moksha. This is a very subtle and a beautiful point. Viveka Chudamani, first few verses, so much of emphasis is there. Strive for moksha, strive for moksha. And see how beautiful this teaching is. Teaching continues and the student understands, I was ever free. He is not making moksha as an event. That such and such day, such and such time, such and such place. He says, don't tie Paramartha moksha with any of these desha kala, because that is also part of avidya. Okay, this point we had seen in Saddarshanam, 41st verse. Baddhatva bhave sati moksha chinta. Bandha tu kasya iti vicharanena. Until we think we are bound, we are anxious of liberation. Baddhatva bhave sati moksha chinta. But if we inquire, to whom does bondage belong to? Means that pure consciousness can never be bound. Then the final line is Kwabandha chinta, kvacha moksha chinta. Siddhe swayam swatmani nityamukte. In that truth which is eternal and ever free. In that truth, where is the question of bondage? Where is the question of liberation? Now Shankaracharya says, listen to few more problems. If you say bondage is real and liberation is real, the problem there is, your real bondage, what you are trying to say was, it was beginningless, but it has come to an end. And your liberation has begun and it is endless. Liberation started at some point and it is endless. Bondage was beginningless and it has ended right now. He says there is no example to prove this point. Kincha bandha mukta avasthayoho Poorva Parya Nirupanayam Bandhavastha Purvam Prakalpya. If you say bondage was there before, real bondage, Anadimati Anantavati cha. It is beginningless. Anadimati Antavati cha. And it is having an end. Tacha Pramana Viruddham. That is not established by any valid means. This is our general notion, right? That we have been bound from Anadi, time immemorial, and a time will come when we'll be free. He says that is Pramana Viruddha. That is not the right way to think. What is the right way to think? I was never bound. And this notion of bondage was an erroneous notion. It's not very difficult. Just look at the rope snake example. What should the rope say about its liberation? I was a snake before and now I have become rope. Or should it say, I was never snake to begin with, nor do I need to become the rope, because I was ever the rope. As simple as that. Okay, so he gives an example. Generally, what example do we quote for anadi, a thing which is beginningless and it has an end? The example given is pragabhava. Pragabhava means, let's say there is a pot. Before that pot came into existence, what was there? It's a non-existence, abhava. Now that non-existence lasted for time immemorial, anadi, it didn't have a beginning. But the moment the pot was born, that non-existence ended. So that example is given for bondage. That bondage is beginningless and there is a time when it will end. Bhagavan says, look at the type of your example. You are giving example of abhava which is not even there. So abhava is not a real thing that you can quote that example for bandha. An example of something having a beginning and being endless. They say pradvamsa bhava. If there is a pot and you break the pot, so after breaking the pot there is non-existence. So that non-existence had a beginning, but it continues. It is endless. So that example is given for liberation. So again you are giving example of abhava only. So his main point is you cannot establish that there is such a thing which can be beginningless and has an end, or such a thing which is having a beginning and it is endless. So his main point here is, if you have two states, bound state and liberated state, real bound state, real liberated state, that cannot be eternal. It can always fall back into bondage again. Only if that state was because of ignorance, like in the case of snake and rope, then just right knowledge is sufficient. Even the word knowledge destroys ignorance, that also can be refined further. In Vedanta Sara, if you see, the terminology is very precise. There it is said, our Brahmakara Vritti does badha of ajnanam, not nasha. Badha means what? It negates. Means reality given to that avidya, that is removed. That itself is knowledge. We don't have to make ignorance into a real entity and say knowledge has come, it has displaced ignorance somewhere in that way. Now Bhagavan, do you accept that scriptures are meaningful? Because your answer was little tangential. You said everybody has the same problem, we don't have to answer it separately. So what is your opinion? Are scriptures helpful or not? He says they are very helpful at the time of ignorance. Nacha shastra anarthakyam yatha prasiddha avidvat purusha vishayatvat shastrasya. Because scriptures are addressing a sadhaka who has ignorance. And who is this ignorant person? Avidusham hi phala hetvoho anatmanoho atmadarshanam. Phala hetu means he has desire for a result and he has attachment to the means of that result. Hetu means karma. Phala means the karma phala, and the reason for that karma phala is the karma. One who thinks, if I get that object, I'll be happy. Only when I do this thing, I'll be happy. To remove that notion of doership, for that, scriptures are very helpful. And Shankaracharya says, Jnani doesn't have any injunctions of scriptures. Even though scriptures have do's and don'ts, they don't apply to a jnani. And he gives an example. If there are two people standing, one's name is Devadatta, another's name is Vishnumitra. If you give an injunction to Devadatta, Devadatta, Tvam idam kuru. O Devadatta, you do this. Even though Vishnumitra heard it, he will not take it as injunction for him, because he knows he is different from Devadatta. Like that, even though scriptures are giving so many injunctions, they don't apply to jnani, they apply to ajnani. And this is just to show that the freedom in Advaita Vedanta is freedom from Vidhi Nisheda also. Now there is a person who is sitting there. He says there could be situations where injunction is given to one person, but it applies to everybody. See, what they are pointing out here is all the Karma Kanda portion of Vedas, that you have to do Swarga Kama, you have to do a ritual to go to Swarga, and several other do's and don'ts. His point is they apply to everybody. And Bhagavan Shankaracharya is trying to say they apply only to those who have desire, not to a person who has crossed over desires. That is his point. So this Poorva Pakshi says, no. What example did you give? If I give injunction to Devadatta, Vishnumitra will not do it. There are some cases where you give one injunction to one person, but it applies to whoever is related to that person. So if father is told to do Sandhya Vandanam, what it implies is son also should do Sandhya Vandanam. Separate injunction need not be given. If it is cold outside, cold weather, and you tell one person, in this weather you should wear warm clothing, or else you might fall sick. Now you are telling one person, but that injunction applies to everybody, because there is prakruta sambandha, there is a relationship in the form that all are human beings. If you give some instruction in the class, please come 5 minutes before the class. Now you might tell one person, but that applies to everybody in the class. Like that he says, why don't the injunctions of scripture apply to everybody? They might be talking to one person, but if there is some kind of relationship, then it should apply to all. Shankaracharya says, you didn't get my point. Jnani seeing himself as different from phala hetu means he is seeing himself different from conditionings, and he is seeing, or he has gone beyond desires. Don't take it literally. The example that we gave of Devadatta Vishnumitra, Jnani doesn't see himself different from Ajnani and says those injunctions are for Ajnani, not for me. Not in that sense. He says Jnani doesn't see himself as conditioned. And because he doesn't have desires, therefore he is free from injunction of scriptures. Now there is a social reformer in the Poorva Pakshi. He says, I'm still not convinced. How can you exclude jnani from injunction of scriptures? Because what people emulate is the behavior of jnani. He says, if jnani doesn't follow the vidhi nisheda, who will follow? He says, materialistic person is not going to follow. Jnani is not going to follow. So who is going to follow all this vidhi nisheda? Shankaracharya says, don't worry about who is going to follow scriptures. There are sufficient people who will. He has given a very precise pointer on who is a dharmic person. First thing he says is, this person is somebody who has heard about different types of vows. All do's and don'ts, in modern context if you want to see, they are vows, vratam. Not only heard, he has seen the efficacy of that. If you have a desire, go to that pilgrimage place. Offer it at the feet of the Lord. So going to that pilgrimage place, taking up certain vows, all of them are vidhi nisheda. So this person is somebody who has heard about it and seen the efficacy of it. So he will do it. Materialistic person who thinks I am the body, he will not do it. Jnani who has gone beyond desires, he need not do it. But don't say there is no audience for Shastra. So that person who has heard about these vows and seen the efficacy of it, that person will do. Second, he says, this person has understood, I am not only the body, I am jiva also. I mean, there is something in me that travels across different bodies. It has taken several bodies before. This happens to be one of that. So that person who is believing in Jivatma, that person will do it. Third, he says, this person doesn't have clear knowledge of the truth yet. He also will become adhikari for vidhi nisheda. Not having clear knowledge of the truth. 5 things he points out. First one was one who has heard about vratam, either from elders in the family, from scriptures, and he has seen the efficacy. Second is somebody who knows I am not only the body, I am a jiva. Third one, he says he doesn't have knowledge of truth. Moment he understands he is that pure consciousness, everything is an appearance, he will not have that push to do anything for being complete or for fulfilling desires. Fourth one, he says, one who has strong desires. One who has strong desires, that person will take up these vidhi nisheda. He cannot remove that desire just by saying, I don't have desires. So it is better that he has an intelligent way to exhaust it and grow out of it. So they will do. And last one, he says, one who is endowed with faith. That person will follow these vidhi nisheda. So you don't worry that if jnani doesn't have vidhi nisheda, nobody will follow vidhi nisheda. See, Bhagavan is painting different perspectives. And we have to connect all the points which are there in other places also. Like in Bhagavad Geeta, Bhagavan says, whatever a Sreshta Purusha does, that other people emulate. So for Loka Sangraha, several things will be done. That is one point of view. But here he is saying, even if you see a jnani who is not doing certain things, he said, don't worry about scriptures losing their audience. There are sufficient people who are faithful, they need certain things in life, and they have seen the efficacy of these methods. Okay. Let us move to the value portion now. This was the Bhashya part, different facets of importance of Shastra. Let us just chant the first verse, okay? Every time we chant 5 verses, it takes some time. 8th verse, 13th chapter. Amanitvamadambhitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham sthairyamatma vinigraha. Sometimes I feel when we discuss Bhashya and values, these values are like pickle, which give us ability and appetite to digest the Bhashya. First value we saw was amanitvam, atmanah shlaghanam tad abhavaha. Amanitvam, simple words, means egolessness. Second one that we saw was adambhitvam, swadharma prakatikaranam dambhitvam tad abhavaha. Adambhitvam means no urge to talk about one's own good qualities. Prakatikaranam means to show off. Third value we had seen in the last session, that was ahimsa. Ahimsa, Shankaracharya said, praninam apidanam, means my thoughts, my words and my actions should not hurt anybody. That is the meaning of ahimsa. And we had seen different facets of ahimsa, where externally it might appear as ahimsa, but if our intention is not pure, then that becomes apparent ahimsa becomes himsa. So we had seen the example of speech. 2 extremes. One extreme is speaking in such a way that it hurts the other person. That clearly is himsa. Another extreme is because of ego, where we don't speak with somebody. That is also one form of himsa. If you read Puju Guruji's book, Marriage a Melody, there he mentions some points. And one point he mentions is, whatever disagreements, conflicts might be there, one should strive to resolve it the same day. He says, for a happy marriage, try not to take on the disagreements to the next day. And most of our misunderstandings come because our communication stops. That is this sadhana. I remember I'd read one small piece where it said one couple got into an argument, heated argument. And when you get into that argument, first thing that happens is you don't talk. So night, when he was about to go to bed, he remembered next day he has a business trip early morning. Wanted to wake up early, but how will he tell her to wake him up early? So he wrote a small note, I have an early morning flight tomorrow, wake me up at 5 a.m. and put it on her pillow, went to sleep. Next morning he woke up, it was 7 o'clock. Very mad, goes at her. And before he could say anything, she points out to another note. She had also written, it's 5 a.m., please wake up. Both of them. I mean, the sadhana here is, I should see within. is there any kind of conversations we are stopping because of ego? One of the name of Bhagwan Rama is Om Poorva Pakshi Namaha. Means one who doesn't wait for the other person to speak first. Poorva Pakshi means one who takes the initiative to speak. That is his quality of ahimsa. It lies mainly in the intention. If that is pure, we'll be able to meditate better. If misunderstandings are resolved, our sadhana will be better, our efficiency will be better. In spite of trying our best, if let us say the other person is not interested, then follow Bhajagovindam advice. Kshatrau mitre putre bandhau ma kuru yatnam vigraha sandhau. Shankaracharya says, after you have tried your best, don't worry too much about friendship and breaking up. Vigraha sandhau. Vigraha means breaking up. Sandhi means to build a truce with the other person. Provided that person's goal is moksha. For that person, this advice is given. How much time we have to be friends, how much time we have to be inimical, lot of that is decided by karma also. It is not only self-effort, something of the past might influence that. So don't get overly concerned. It's a fine line. Where should I put effort? Where should I accept? But main thing is watching our ego. Is that stopping me from speaking? Then I should work on myself. But don't spend too much energy only in that. Next quality is Kshanti. Amanitvam, Adambitvam, ahimsa, Kshanti. Kshanti is different from Shanti. Kshanti comes from Ksham Dhatu. Ksham Dhatu means to forbear. That ability to forbear brings the quality of forgiveness. And Shankaracharya says, the ability to not be revengeful, even when somebody has wronged us. He says that is Kshanti. Kshantihi para aparadha prapto. Para aparadha prapto means somebody has wronged this person. Avikriya. Avikriya means not having the tendency to take a revenge. That quality is called as Kshanti. This is also such a beautiful value for a sadhaka that it will save us from going into several things and wasting our time there. This attitude of pratishodha, revenge, it will drain our time and keep our mind preoccupied. Now if we just see like any other value, how should one cultivate forgiveness? We will notice wherever there is love and wherever we consider other person as our own, it is very easy to forgive. If we are finding it difficult to forgive, that means we don't love that person enough, or we don't feel a bond with that person. Puja Gurudev's quote, when love becomes thin, faults become thick. And one of the strength of a sadhaka is his power, the ability to love. So wherever he is able to see his Bhagavan and love the other person, this is forgiveness is not difficult. forgetfulness of the Lord and lack of love. That makes forgiveness very difficult. So we have to sit down and think. Wherever I am unable to forgive, am I able to see my Lord there? If not, what can I do to see? So wherever there is oneness, forgiveness is easy. Let's say there is a person who got a new car, brand new car, goes to work, comes back, and sees a scratch on his car, just below the door. First instance is to get upset. Who did this? And his wife tells him it was his 1-year-old boy who was learning to walk, he scratched it. Suddenly that scratch becomes souvenir. This boy who learned to walk, cherished memory is what he did. And if he comes to know that it was neighbor's child, suddenly his mind changes. That parent should have taken care. You see, what is the difference between these two situations? This child is mine. He has belongingness there and love. Wherever that love and belongingness is there it is easy to forgive. Kshanti. Another way to think about Kshanti, forgiveness, is we should look at the consequences of revenge. Don't go by Hindi movies. There it is glorified so much. Before the grandfather dies, he takes a promise. Iska badla leke rehna. Unless you take revenge of this person, I won't find peace. And the movie continues. This is all good in movies. You see what happens when a person goes on the path of revenge. One is, we think that we will always, have a very smooth path, even if we take the revengeful path. But we realize it can land us in more trouble. And one good example for this is the story of Drona and Drupada in Mahabharata. That whole story is very interesting. It is to show this point, that path of revenge can land up a person in greater trouble. Drona and Drupada were friends in the Gurukula, and Drona lives a very humble life, doesn't have a lot of prosperity. Drupada goes on to become the king. And Drona's wife Kripi, she says, we are going through such difficult times and the king is your friend. At least ask for one cow. So Drona goes to Drupada and says, we both were friends. Can I have a cow? Drupada doesn't like that first sentence, we both were friends. He says friendship can be between equals. Drona feels so insulted, he goes back and says, I will show you what it means to be equal. Goes to Hastinapura, trains all the Pandavas, makes them one of the best warriors, and gives them a group project. First group project is not kill Drupada, bring him alive at my feet. All Pandavas go. Drupada was no match for them. Arjuna, such a great archer. They catch Drupada and bring him. He doesn't kill him or do anything. He says, your Panchala Desha which was there, you wanted to be friends with me, right? You take half of it, I will take half of it. Then Drupada goes with so much anger and vengeance, does a special yajna to bring Drishtadyumna. And Drona's son was Ashwathama. Now you see the thing there, huh? Drupada's son is Drishtadyumna. he ends up killing Drona. Means Dronacharya gives up the body because of Ashwathama. And Ashwathama ends up killing Drupada. Means that whole story is something where it started and where it went, all because of that one revenge. That is why they say, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So this sadhaka understands what are the consequences of revenge. Another very practical example is road rage. We see it in the world day in and day out. One person was going to get some medicines on a bike. Another bike just brushed him. Nothing happened, no casualty. Got down from the bike. That person also got down. He started saying few things. Other person started saying. Other people who are there, they become spectators. In Hindi there is a phrase, 100 धक्के खाए फिर भी तमाशा घुस के देखा. Means I went through several blows, but still this fight which was happening, that I saw with lot of interest. And one blow here, one blow there. So this person had to be taken to the hospital. Went to get medicines, landed up in hospital. That is the vritti of pratishodha, revenge. We went out to do something, got sidetracked, ego got the better of us. So when a person becomes aware of consequences of revenge in the world and in one's own life, he is more inclined to practice Kshanti. That's why children also, when they drive, what advice do we give them? No matter what happens, you don't get involved. That is Kshanti in one form, because we appreciate the chaos caused by the opposite of revenge. Even if you look at it at a bigger scale, whichever nation has revenge as its core policy, growth in that nation is always stunted. Geopolitical tensions, no long-term planning, because all energy is gone in scheming for this revenge. Two nations, same time getting liberation. You will see the difference in the progress. One goes on the principle of Kshama. Kshama not in the wrong sense. Means if enemy is attacking and if the country says we have to practice forgiveness, that is misplaced forgiveness. Kshama in the sense of we will not be offensive. First attack on any country will not come from us. The progress that country can make and another country which is based on this revengeful attitude, we will see a difference there. Sports also we see whenever people allow emotions to get better of them, they end up committing some blunder. It's a strategy also. You invoke that emotion, allow that person to be victim of his emotion of revenge. In court, they follow this. Two lawyers arguing against each other. If you are able to evoke anger in the other person, 50% of his competence comes down. Because he is not logical, he is revengeful. So all this put together, person is able to appreciate that Kshanti is much better than pratishodha, because it comes with a cost. Srimad Bhagavatam, there is another very nice episode where Ashwathama, he goes and kills all the sons of Draupadi. This is after the war is done. And she's in so much sorrow, Arjuna cannot see it. And he says, I will bring this Ashwatthama at your feet. And he goes with Bhagavan Krishna, finds Ashwatthama, brings him at Draupadi's feet. He says, you tell me what I should do to him. And at that time, Draupadi says, we all are Krishna Shrita Parivara. Means our family is devoted to the Lord. So what you have to do to him now is, let him go. Arjuna says, why? Draupadi says, I know what it is to lose all my children. So I don't want Kripi, Ashwatthama's mother, to have the same emotion. So that is Kshanti, where a person says, I will hold on to my value system no matter what aparadha is done towards me. So we saw what is Kshanti and what are some ways of cultivating Kshanti. When we appreciate the consequences of pratishodha, or when we are able to see the other person as our own, that's a spiritual value. Have love towards the other person, then Kshanti is effortless. In Ramayana, we see two types of forgiveness. One is Bhagwan Rama. No matter what Kaikeyi did, he didn't even feel that she has done anything wrong. And second is our Lakshmanji. He knows or he sees that Kaikeyi is doing something wrong, but he is able to look over it. So one is a Siddha Mahatma who doesn't get affected by any wrongdoing. Second is a Sadhaka. Even though there is something wrong, he is able to look over it. But just like any value, this Kshama also has to be practiced properly. According to the Dharma, person will have to do their duty. If a judge is there and a person is convicted of some crime, now he cannot be only forgiving. That is not his dharma. Again, he cannot give verdict with revenge. There's a very fine line. He has to do what is his dharma, but as far as his vision of the world is concerned, that is based on Kshama only. That's why the country's example was very relevant. If a perpetrator comes into the country, there the country cannot operate on forgiveness. But it is also not based on revenge. Okay, so all these points we can keep thinking. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Bhashya topics, please to revise them one by one, whatever we see. If you are able to read the commentary, well and good. But even if you are able to recap the main points what we discussed, we are seeing all the minute points also, but I am not reading the Sanskritam part. Okay. And the values part, more mananam we do, greater joy in it. First, striving to cultivate it, but at the same time, if you are teaching Bal Vihar or any other young adult group, these are the things we can focus and discuss. Okay. Hari Om, everyone.